Here we go.
Okay, it is recording. Um, so you began your photography, and tonight we're going to see scanned slides from your early photography in the mid-70s through 2004, when you switched to a digital camera. Tonight we're going to see views of New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, Washington region, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Toronto, and more. Having seen part of the preview show, we're going to see, I know, the South Shore and some Amtrak as well. So at this point, I'll let Ron take it away. Let me see if you can share your screen. Let me see if you can. Can you share your screen, or do I have to turn it on?
You have to turn it on.
Okay, so hold on. I have to do the. See if you can share your screen now.
Okay, here we go. Share.
There you go.
Okay.
Do you want to just share the? Oh, there you go. Perfect.
We're all set. Okay, yep. Here's the first image. I'm going to start everybody off with a what do you call it? A whirlwind historic tour for the 1980s and 70s, 80s, and 90s of what apparently the U.S. likes to call high-speed rail, even though it's not world-class high-speed rail of 300 kilometers an hour as the benchmark standards. The most we can hope for is somewhere in the 125 to 150 mile an hour, and maybe hopefully soon the Acela 2 Avelia Liberty high-speed sets go to 160, 165. But anyways, we're going to take a little step back to 1981. I had some contract work when I worked for a consulting company down in Lower Manhattan, and we had a traffic study called Route 92 in New Jersey. And I used to get done with work around about between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, and I would make a customary stop or two at various places along the Northeast corridor. Anyways, here's a rebuilt Metroliner 2 series 4-car consist. What Amtrak did was, because of all the maintenance issues with the original Metroliners, the way they were built, they rebuilt a number of cars with the resistor grid humps on top to keep the heat away from the underfloor. They re-geared the cars for better acceleration at the low end. However, that basically took away the 160 mile an hour capability, limiting them to 130. Granted that the corridor back then was only good for 110, 130 was more than enough. So here it is, whizzing through Princeton Junction coming southbound. And we have a little bit of a dust cloud. You look at it, it's during the Northeast Corridor Improvement Project. If you look at the track to the left, they have the concrete ties down. It's not in service yet. So this kind of dates the photograph, the summer of 1981, when they were doing concrete ties throughout the up and down the corridor. Now moving on from this, now we're just going to fly through a few pictures. Different faces of Metroliners. This is the original Amtrak scheme, paint scheme for the Metroliners. They used to like to mix and match them. I never did find a whole set of 4 cars all matched up. There was always one Penn Central version, mucking up things. But 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Here's a 4-car set of Penn Central, original Pennsylvania Railroad striping. It had a Penn Central logo, and that's gone. And Amtrak, I guess, just never bothered putting on the white Amtrak logo underneath the engineer's window, which a lot of them actually did before they got painted. But this is all at Princeton Junction before the high-level platforms came in. Back in those days, you could literally walk across the tracks if you wanted to. Here's a rear shot near Ivy City Yard, just north of Washington, D.C. Inbound Washington-bound Metroliner. That's the cafe cars with the blind cutouts in the middle. And next to a United Aircraft Amtrak Turbo that was set aside for disposal eventually. They had just been retired. Unfortunately, I didn't come on a railfan scene. until most of the UAs have been removed from the Boston service. But at least I was able to get a comparison of the two initial high-speed train sets in the U.S. This is the interior of the Amtrak parlor car. They had built, I believe, 10 parlor cars out of the 61 cars. I think they built 31 coaches, 20 dinette, cafe cars, and 10 parlors. These are single swivel seat parlor cars. You can actually turn these seats all the way around. Beautifully upholstered, very nice. Even business class today has 2-in-1 seating, not 1-in-1. This is a very rare and now ancient luxury. This is the Metroliner coach's interior, as it was back in the mid-1970s. This is the controls of the Metroliner. Very, very basic. One of the very first trains running around was a semi-desktop control. You had the reverser over here. The reverser key's been removed. That's your horn. That's your brake handle. This is your throttle over here, the slot for the throttle. The throttle's all the way down and handle off. But unlike railroads where you pull back for full power and push forward to shut off power on most diesel and throttle electric equipment, this is more like a rapid transit car where you push the throttle forward to go forward and pull it back to remove power. Your speedometer was over here, the old-fashioned LED type of yellow display, and then your cruise control is set down here. You could dial up the speed, and the train would maintain that speed. Here's all your air gauges and your fault lights up on top. Kind of cramped, that cab, but it's functional. Moving on to the next experience, or the next iteration of high-speed rail on the Northeast Corridor. In the early 90s, 1993, Amtrak contracted with ABB, as well as German ice trains from Siemens. And they had 2 trial runs. The X2000 was here for 2 years. The ice train joined it the second year in 1994. Here it is coming racing northbound at about 135 miles an hour through Thurgood Warsaw BWI Airport Station in the fog. Other shots of it going through Princeton Junction and cross Portal Bridge, which incidentally, this bridge is slated for replacement with a new bridge that's going to be built a little bit higher, so it doesn't have to be a movable structure anymore. This bridge has been the bane of all commuters and passengers in the Northeast Corridor, with it getting stuck quite often in the open position. Way in the background here is the old World Trade Center.
Ron, quick question. Yes. You showed a picture of Princeton Junction before high level and after. Do you know what year they changed it?
I don't remember. It probably these high level platforms probably came in sometime in the late 1980s, I would suspect. Once they went to this high speed service of the concrete ties to start going 125 miles an hour, I highly suspect that's when they put the high level platforms in. Well, first they put the intertrack fence in, then they put the high level platforms in for ease of boarding. Ease of boarding, ADA compliance. The ease of boarding also cuts down the dwell times at the stations too. Instead of people going up and down the steps, you just walk off the train like a subway train. Your throughput of service, it gets dramatically increased. Your station dwell times, instead of being 4 or 5 minutes, can be down as low as 1 minute. Anyway, this is Portal Bridge, and this is a little bit of a screamer shot over here. Amtrak way back used to run 1 Metroliner round trip up in the morning all the way to New Haven. It would lay over until about 2:30 in the afternoon, then come back to New York and make the 4 o'clock out of 10. I knew what time the train was coming up. I think it was the one that arrived at about 9 o'clock in the morning. It would continue on to New Haven. So one morning I decided to don a hard hat and a safety vest, get on through the signal maintainer's hut and gate at 44th Street in Queens, and walk the whole length of the Hellgate Viaduct to this location in the middle of the curve on Randall's Island. Don't recommend anybody try and do that now, you'll be arrested. But I'm standing on the abandoned Conrail or former New Haven freight track That's been abandoned for years. New York, what do you call it? The CSX New York Connecting runs on this track that's not electrified, and the Northeast Corridor in the far two right tracks. Because I had a white hard hat and a safety vest and a clipboard full of 6 pages of blank paper, everybody passed me off as a FRA inspector. So I got away with it. I wouldn't do it now, but these are historic shots, so enjoy. That's a train passing by the other way, going towards the Bronx and New Haven. This is at Old Greenwich, going westbound in the afternoon, coming back towards New York. Notice the triangular catenary. Yeah, having high-speed rail underneath old-style 1930s New Haven catenary. It's an interesting juxtaposition. Next to an M2 at Stamford. From the Hilton parking garage at Bridgeport, you can't get this shot anymore. The foreground over here is now a pedestrian bridge that's white colored, and it goes down to the bus terminal that's down below. So this view is completely and forever blocked off. That's Bridgeport again. The Port Jefferson Bridgeport ferry docks over here to the side where my cursor is. That's the X2000 coming into Bridgeport. Then the following year, they brought the ICE train from Germany, and that was doing the corridor demonstration project at 135 miles an hour also. Because it wasn't a tilt equipment, it was subject to the same limitations on the curves as the regular standard equipment amp fleets. The X2000 used to zoom right through the curves. I remember riding it down to DC on a sample ride once, and the crew would actually announce, now coming into the curves at Bristol, Pennsylvania, normally rated for 110, we are now going through at 125. They used to actually announce how much faster than normal we were going. Anyway, this is coming northbound through New Brunswick on a bright summer morning. The experiment continued on into the fall. This is in the cold days of December, coming north through New Brunswick. I like the tunnel effect of the catenary towers going all the way to the back looking south. It's a nice tunnel effect. And the position lights, old Penzie style. This is a Metuchen coming through. And again, a portal draw. I've got to see if I can get down here again without having a major hassle. I want to catch the Acelo 1s before they're gone, and the ACS 64s before they start making major construction efforts and destroying this scene forever. At the end of the experiment, they sent the ICE on a nationwide tour, and Amtrak cobbled together its 2 F-69 Winnebagos, 450 and 451 were the unit numbers, a baggage car full of ICE 2000 paraphernalia, and the ICE cars themselves. And they went on a nationwide tour. The day that they left New Haven, I took a little time off from work and chased the train up to there and got a couple of shots of it. Now, moving back along the corridor to yesteryear, this is GG1 4877 in Tuscan red. They painted 2 GG1s, one in Brunswick green 4935 and 4877 with the Tuscan red unit. This unit was assigned to Jersey Transit Service and never ran an Amtrak service. This is coming through Harrison, going southbound. Unfortunately, this photo location is kind of risky for a rail fan to stand around with a camera. The Port Authority just doesn't care for it for whatever reason. GG1s going westbound, coming through just east of Mamaroneck underneath triangular catenary. GG1 coming through Princeton Junction. And a shot of 2 GG1s and an E60 CP with the ghetto gates in the front to protect the engineer. Speaking of these gratings up there to protect the engineer, I never understood why they never painted these things black. They were painted bright silver. They must have been horrible for the engineer to look out through the window, you know, looking out ahead on a sunny day. The glare coming back must have been something awful. Anyways, yeah, this is the Sunnyside Yards. back in the day. It doesn't look like that anymore now. I went down into Sunnyside Yard off the Queens Boulevard stairway access that the Amtrak workers use to access from the nearby I&D stop. And there's an old saying back, way back, if you act like you belong, people think you belong. So I walked around with impunity in Sunnyside Yards for a number of years. They've tightened everything up now, but I think to this day you may still be able to get away with it to a certain degree before somebody notices you don't have the right ID tag around your neck. But for the most part, back then it was easy peasy getting into the yards. And that, by the way, is a Jersey Arrow 2 in the 500 series. That was the middle child of the Arrow 1s, Arrow 2s, and Arrow 3s made by General Electric.
Ron, I'm
Yes.
getting questions. Can you switch your slide viewer to full screen, please? It's just that thing in the lower right, just where the slider is. Yeah,
Yep.
that one.
It's not going to do it too much.
No, not the slider. No, that's the thing next to it to the left.
Well, it's going to go small.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, I can't really do anything else to it.
Okay, what about the thing one to the left of that? Nope, never mind. All right.
Yeah, it's not going to do it. This is an old Windows 7 program that I'm using.
Okay.
If I was using the other machine, I may be able to do it, but I'm using this with my trusty old Windows 7, which I'm more comfortable with. Anyway, here's views of GG1s in freight service. You got 3 motors and probably 100-something car freight. And I will remember this gave me an impression when it was so impressive when it went by. It was doing a full 70 miles an hour coming down the corridor. And with the weight of those 3 motors up front, there was literally a shock wave on the ground ahead of the engine. Where I was standing, the ground almost had a little bit of an undulation as the train went by. It was like a shock wave. But freights don't run up and down the corridor all that much anymore. This is back in the day when it was mixed freight and passenger. Okay, this is a Conrail E44. I didn't catch any pictures of the Virginia E33s, but here's a 3-unit lash up of E44s heading north. Again, near Princeton Junction area. When the E44s and 33s were retired, they went to diesel. This is a container train and another hotshot container train coming through Princeton. You can tell Princeton was one of my favorite hangouts for the high speeds. Some more Conrails, auto racks this time. And now we move on to another little treat over here. Up until 1984, the Delaware Lackawanna and Western, which became the Erie Lackawanna, and finally New Jersey Transit, used to run these 1930s vintage Edison electrics. And they had motor trailer combinations. The motors were all built in the 1930s to the same specs. The coaches were a variety. Some of them were actually hauled by steam locomotives way back near the turn of the century. They were that old. They had the wicker seats and the fans inside. You'll see that a little bit later on. But this is at Hoboken in their original, Coleman green, dark green colors. You can see some of the high clear-story roof car coaches, as well as the low clear-story roof trailer cars as well. To spiff up the cars, some of the cars received a paint job in the last 5 years of the service. Here's one of the repaints in the old Pullman green. They actually painted a few of them in traction orange. You'll see them in a couple of slides. Traction orange with cream color windowsills, like this. It's a matter of personal preference which one you want. These are much brighter and more cheerful looking, but they weren't really traditionally true to form, but it did the job. Again, this is a Hoboken. This is another shot that you cannot do anymore. This is on the Morris, that's the Hoboken division triple track raceway between Newark and Hoboken. I walked in from a street entrance at Harrison, past Old Hudson Tower, and all the way to this location and beyond. One of these days in the future show, I'm going to put on the show up in the corner here. I got Northeast Corridor equipment, the Metroliners, E60s, Arrow equipment, path trains down below. I was actually up the embankment there. Can't do that anymore. Anyway, there were you can see that they're slowly electrifying for 25 kilovolt in this line. They're still at 3000 DC, and they're going to throw the switch on the weekend of August 26, 1984. And the day, and after that point, everything was 25 kilovolt. This is over here at Bloomfield on the Montclair branch. And this is over here at Brickchurch. This train was racing on through on a nonstop express. And this is over at Mountain Station. Let's see if I can drop this little bar down here. Okay, this way it won't interfere with the picture. Okay, here we go. This is a Mountain Station with a solid green 4-car set. And Mountain Station coming northbound. Back in the mid-1970s, you could literally set your watch by this line. They came right to the minute. If it said 10:23, at 10:22 into the station it came, and it'd be part of right on time at 10:23. Very well-run railroad back then. It was almost like a Swiss railroad. This is at Milburn Junction, where you went from 3 tracks down to 2 coming into Milburn. A little interesting story behind this one, which is the reason why they don't want the rail fans running around the tracks. I was out here shooting pictures in the evening rush, and back in the day when they were re-electrifying the system, they would run diesels during the day to facilitate the re-energizing or the resetting of the catenary for 25 kilovolts, and starting with the 4 p.m. departure out of Hoboken, go back to electric service. This is the first or second electric that was coming through, and I was up shooting pictures, and I went all the way down to this little arch bridge and walked back after shooting a 3rd train. And on the way back, I kind of tripped and stumbled over a cable of some sorts. Thought nothing of it. There was a little signal hut with a tower operator hiding inside of there, and all I could hear was a lot of chatter in the radio. I was waiting near the area for the next train, which never showed up. And I kept hearing the operator saying, I've got no code. I lost the code line. I got no signal and no control. Apparently, I think my foot must have disconnected one of the cables. So upon realizing that, I quickly left the scene and drove home. This is over here at Milburn. You see 2 trains, one going away and one coming at me. This is here at Short Hills in the old days. Summit. This is actually a Gladstone branch train. When the train came in, you'd go, you'd transfer from the train that was going up to Dover, up and over and onto the train to Gladstone. Most of the time, the Gladstone trains are 4-car sets. This is one of the repaints on the Traction Orange at Summit. Going further down the main line towards Morristown and Dover, here's Chatham. Madison, the classic stone station building. You notice the catenary up here. You see how what the new mounts of the 25 kilovolt wires. They've already completed the re-electrification here. They just had to switch it from 3000 DC to 25,000 AC. This is in the section between Chatham and Madison. They have a mixture of green and traction orange cars. A solid 8-car train of greens, also between Chatham and Madison. This is taken in the early spring. You can see the foliage just starting to show up. This is up by a Convent Station, and the 4-car set heading actually back towards Hoboken. This is a Morris Plains. Getting shots of these trains out that far, by the time the 4 o'clock got out to Morris Plains, it was getting pretty dark. The shadows are getting long, so I'm glad I was able to shoot this picture before it got too dark. This is in stretch. I actually got off at Denville and walked the tracks all the way to Dover. And this is a train just happened to pass by on the stretch between Denville and Dover. Again, I wouldn't recommend doing this nowadays. You'd be hardened for trespassing. This is another 4-car cut of the old Edison MUs at Dover, the last stop. And going down the Gladstone branch, this is at New Providence. And you're over here at New Providence again. And you're over at Berkeley Heights, working your way further south on the Gladstone branch of Berkeley Heights. And once you get just south of Millington Station, you can go across to the Millington River Bridge. There's a road access to there. I didn't walk the bridge. Generally, I don't do things like that. That's just too dangerous. But I had a car that day, so I drove to the other side of the Millington River Bridge. It was a little pull-off. Parked the car and waited for the next train. And there it is. This is out in Gladstone, the last stop of the Gladstone branch. And if you wanted to see what the reminisce what the interiors look like, that's what the coaches look like with the up and down draw shades, the old advertising boards, the fans overhead, the incandescent bulbs, and the wonderful little light fixtures that gave the cars that nice yellow glow on the inside at nighttime. And this is one of, I think, 2 parlor cars that the Lackawanna had that was still running all the way to the end of electric service with these vintage cars. Kind of amusing. I'm looking at that chair right down the middle. I noticed how they put a brick underneath one of the legs. That must have been fun to ride on crooked. Anyways, moving away from the Erie Lackawanna MUs, couple more shots over here with the U34CHs. Of course, your typical GE as it's powering up. Once the prime mover, once the engine starts taking load, the prime mover kicks in, and a whole bunch of soot comes flying out of the stack. U34s are famous for stack fires. This is one of the U34s coming into Chatham, in Jersey Transit colors. And in former Erie Lackawanna colors, they just painted over with silver paint the EL symbol. They didn't have a chance to put DOT or New Jersey Transit on it quite yet, but I think they were just gonna get around to painting them with Jersey Transit completely. But you can see what do you call it? The Comet 1s and 2s actually. These are Comet 1s. You can see the low-level doors. And you had a Comet 2A in the back, which is stainless steel. It's essentially a Silverliner or a Jersey Arrow 1 that was not motorized. These are the Comet 1s built by Pullman Standard in the early 1970s. Very lightweight cars. They were the pioneer design for the Bombardier coaches, but these were built extremely light. Believe it or not, each coach only weighed about as much as an IRT subway car, about 35 tons. Very, very lightweight for railroad use. Now we're going to move on to PATH. This is a PA3 train, car number 747 in the original delivery colors at Harrison. This is an exchange place. It's a PA1 in the days before exchange place was rebuilt and made really nice looking. This then actually does the PATH system some good. The other tube going towards New York had some serious water leakage issues, needed some help. Now you don't even know it's the same station. It's completely different. Quite nice looking. It's just unfortunate they have this very restricted photo policy of absolute ban of photos and videos. But you can get away with a couple of them. Just shoot the back of the train when nobody's looking. Don't hang around. This is on the upper level at Newark when the train arrives. And this is the 33rd 33rd Street underneath 6th Avenue at Harold Square. That's a PA3. Just kind of incidentally, you notice the grab iron over here angles over. That's characteristic of a PA3 if you don't look at the numbers. You look further back at this car over here, you notice the grab irons are more New York City Transit straight. That's a PA1. That's how you can tell the difference in these cars. Oops, what did I just do? I got out of it accidentally. Sorry about that. Back to 33rd Harold Square. That's the interior of the old PA3s. They were made by Hawker Siddeley. And then moving onwards, we're going to leave the New York City area. After this, we had a farewell to the K car. They were built by St. Louis Car, and also I believe they were the first air-conditioned rapid transit cars in New York City, in the metro area. They had air conditioning on paths long before New York City subways did. But here's the farewell to the K cars. They relegated a whole bunch of these cars to work service. And when the PA5s came in from Kawasaki, they retired half of the fleet of the PA4s that were built by Kawasaki in '83 and assigned the rest of them to work service, therefore relegating these to the junk pile. It's unfortunate, but yeah, time moves on. At least they have work equipment that's stainless steel. It'll last for a long, long time. Now, moving further west, about 900 miles, looking at other ancient MU cars, this is the Chicago South Shore and South Bend Railroad that's at Randolph Terminal underneath the Prudential Building in Chicago, downtown, about a couple blocks east of the Loop. This is a baggage combine. It was rebuilt from a coach and stretched out to 70-something feet. All the original cars are 60-footers. This is the famous shot of the South Shore cars leaving from underneath the Prudential Building. This is now called Millennium Station in Chicago. It hosts both the Metro Electric, which is the former Illinois Central lines, that went all the way down to University Park and Blue Island and South Chicago, as well as the South Shore line on an eastern terminus of 2 tracks and platforms, 2 platforms and 4 tracks. That's all underground now. So this scene is completely gone. If anybody here has seen Chicago recently, they have this new fancy art sculpture called the Beam. It's a reflectorized stainless steel bean-shaped sculpture, and it sits on a platform that sits right over all these tracks now. This is covered over forever now. This is down by the by 23rd Street, which is now I believe it's called the McCormick Convention Center for Chicago. This used to be a printing press company in the background. And when I was first there in 1979, myself and 2 other friends caught a nice little lucky break here. A IC Electric in original colors and a South Shore racing each other. They were pacing each other on the tracks, and it's not a posed shot. They were actually cruising in at about 25, 30 miles an hour. I got lucky that day. We're now going to take a trip along the Chicago South Shore and South Bend all the way up towards beyond Michigan City. This is the Calumet River Bridge. South Shore cars heading east. Heading out along the East Chicago bypass next to I-90. And at the East Chicago station, I hopped the fence and stood on top of the guardrail here to get an angle so that the fencing doesn't cut off the trucks. But think of it, when was the last time you ever saw I-90 this empty?
Probably now with COVID.
You'd be surprised. With COVID, I think the traffic's even worse. Everybody's in cars. They've unfortunately, the American public, unlike other parts of the world, seems to be very transit averse, and mass transit agencies is going to have their work cut out for them to try and attract the people back. That's the only way society is ever going to really resume any sense of normalcy, is for people to start riding trains again. riding mass transit, buses, subways, trolleys, commuter trains. Driving is not the answer. Cities were not designed for that, never will be designed for that. It's just not a sustainable alternative. This is the way to go, but the American public's going to need a lot of convincing. There was a double track section that was east of the Miller station on the Chicago South Shore. In the back are dual signals to the New York Central Main, which is now CSX, and it carries the Lakeshore Limited. On these two tracks over here, they had flying meets. The South Shore also ran like clockwork. There was a spring switch at either end of this mile-long two-track section, and you would literally have flying meets. And they ran so precise in the schedule, very rarely did the train ever have to stop. Over here at Beverly Shores now, this is a classic old INSO era station. We have a train heading towards Michigan City, and he's going in outbound away from Chicago. A lot of these scenes are going to get changed pretty soon. The South Shore, or NICT, Northern Indiana Commuter Transit District, is spending gobs and gobs of money, and they're going to high-level platform this entire stretch between Michigan City and Hammond, Indiana. Everything will be high-level platforms and double-tracked, and that includes Michigan City street running, which is going to be coming up in the next couple of shots. This is on 12th Street upon entry into Michigan City. A little quick story behind the numerous little children sitting on the side. That's my rental car way in the distance. These kids are doing wheelies and cartwheels all over the place on the street and just having a grand old time. And I said to myself, they're going to ruin the picture because they're going to probably try and monkey around with the train as it's coming in and play chicken. So what I did was I took 5 $1 bills, ripped them all in half, and told them, here's 1/2 for each of you, and then I'll give you the other half if you all sit down and behave yourselves when the train comes through. So they all sat down and behaved themselves like good little boys. It's a wonderful little scene of little children looking at a train. It was kind of staged. But anyways, at the end, I gave them the other half of the dollar bills and told them, now go home, Scotch tape them together, make sure the numbers all match. As long as the serial numbers that are green match on either side, is a good dollar bill. So away they went. So they're very happy, and I was very happy. Anyways, a little bit of a drizzle on a hot summer day, evening rush hour pulling into Michigan City on 11th Street, heading towards the Michigan City Depot. That's the original South Shore Line Michigan City Depot. That South Shore Line sign disappeared over the last 20 years. All there is the mount for it and nothing else. They are supposedly, when they double track this line, I believe they are going to keep this track, put the second track over here, leave this as a one-way traffic lane, and fence it. I think that's how they're going to do it with NICT. Anybody who wants the street running scenes of the Chicago South Shore, make sure you get out there this May, June, July, because I believe starting in July, they're going to start doing the work and on the double tracking, and the face of Michigan City street running will be gone forever. At least it'll start changing. And by summer of 2022, it'll be completely different. Anyway, this is the single track going further east up towards Hudson Lake. That's Molina Hill. And heading all the way up, nearing South Bend, Indiana. During the last days of the Chicago South Shore MUs, a lot of them were just starting to give out due to lack of parts, mechanical age, and just general failings. So what happened was the South Shore rented or leased 2 push-pull diesel sets to supplement the MUs with gallery coaches. So RTA back then was RTA pre-Metra, had some spare Chicago Northwestern steel-sided gallery cars that they could deem surplus, and they assigned an RTA F40 to the consist and ran that. So here it is passing underneath, about to pass underneath the CTA bridge at 63rd Street, which has now been abandoned and lines been cut back to west of the IC main. This is the same concept out in Michigan City. I had an opportunity to drive on the city streets and pace an F40. The leaf spring trucks were right outside the driver's window with the engine howling away. That was an experience. In fact, this is the F40 I paced. They had some stainless steel equipment for the second set. And now we're going to go from old to new. There's the old MUs and the new Nippon Sharyo EMUs. Again at Randolph Street on that double track section up east of Miller and Gary, Indiana. Beverly Shores. On the streets of Michigan City. And in 1985, I think it was CERA, they chartered a fan trip with South Shore cars, a pair of them. And it was right after they took delivery of the second batch of Nippon Sharyo EMUs. And this is the one on the right is the new paint, or the new, quote unquote, back then in 1985, the new paint scheme of the South Shore. The older paint scheme you can see on the other side. This is out east of Michigan City on a passing siding. We had the wire train come by, the 1100, which is the catenary maintenance car. And later on, the catenary maintenance car was seen rumbling down the streets of Michigan City. As you can tell, we had wonderful or typical fan trip weather, dark and drizzly. And now, while we're in Chicago, I might as well just show some images of vintage images of Chicago. These are some 1924, approximately 1924 built Chicago Transit 4000 series class MU subway cars or L cars. This is over at Addison. We had, I think the ERA had a convention in the mid 1990s, and they ran it in conjunction with the CERA. And at the end of the day, they ran this train, and I caught it going back up towards the Howard shops where it was stored at. I think it was eventually destined to go up to Skokie shops. I think that's where they laid them up. But anyways, this is at the end of the day at Addison, and this is him going through and heading away. State and Lake Street on downtown Chicago Loop. 6000 series PCCs. Granted, these are car bodies that were built mostly out of aluminum using PCC parts from old streetcars that were retired off Chicago streets. Somebody came up with the wacky idea that these are actually old PCCs. They're not. The car body was constructed brand new. They just used PCC components, electrical components, the controls, the brakes, etc. They were borrowed, taken off of PCCs, but and applied to these subway cars or L cars. This is out at on the Douglas line going westbound, heading towards Douglas. This is now called the Pink Line. I'm of the older ilk that still calls it Congress Milwaukee, Douglas Milwaukee service, State Street, LaSalle Street subway service. Everything's all color coded now. But anyways, this is another 6000 at a grade crossing. CTA is full of them. This is coming off the one of the Chicago medical centers heading downhill towards Racine Station. This is the Congress Expressway line. This is where the Douglas and the Congress used to meet. Getting shots of CTA L cars on this ramp is not a usual occasion anymore. It only occurs during general orders when they're doing construction of the Pink Line, that they run the Pink Line down the ramp to Racine and turn them down at a sub track just beyond the station. But for the most part, this ramp is basically used as an access point to the Pink Line to link the blue and the pink lines together. But it's not a regular passenger service. I was out in Chicago in 2018 after the ERA convention in the West Coast, and I had some friends of mine that were very kind enough to take me around, all around Chicago for some of these views, and I have some pictures of the newer equipment on this ramp. This is basically, I'm confining the subject matter to this presentation to digitized scanned slides 2004 and earlier. So these are some vintage views over here. This is the CTA 6000s at O'Hare Airport. I think this is the track that had the 2600 or 3200 series car try to climb the escalator a few years back. I'm not sure if it was this. I think it was the middle track. Not sure. Okay, here's some more spam cans at Chicago Station, north of Merchandise Mart. Sears Tower in the background, or now the Willis Tower. I think there's no longer the Willis Tower. It's another name now. They're getting like baseball stadiums, changing names like underwear. These are the Pullman Standard 2000 class cars in their second paint scheme rendition. They were delivered green and white, and then the CTA repainted them to this two-tone gray. I kind of like the green and white better. But this is at Clark and Lake. Again, at Adams and Wabash, the 2000s Pullmans in their final paint scheme for the CTA before they retired. This is during a fan trip in the I believe in the 1990s. I'm not sure exactly what the date was. But this is again at Chicago Station, Merchandise Mart in the background. 2600s and the Pullman, what do you call it? Pullman 2000 posed at Halsted on the Green Line, heading down towards south side of Chicago towards Ashland. One stop away is Halsted Station. This is where we had a photo stop. This is over at Clark and Lake, and these are Bud-built 2200 series cars. The last cars built with blinker-style doors that fold inward like PCC trolley cars. Now everything from 2400s and up, they're all sliding standard transit doors. So this is again down at Clark and Lake, downtown in the Loop, going westbound. This is on the Douglas line. Not sure what station this is. Unfortunately, way back when I was shooting slides, I was not one to go and keep a little spiral-bound notebook, mark down all the locations, get the film back, and then start marking up my slide mounts. I never really did that. All of these locations are either deduced from the subject matter and background or just from memory. It's amazing how much stuff I remember or don't remember. Anyways, these are 2200s again on that famous ramp heading downhill towards Racine. This is old Douglas Milwaukee service. Solid 8-car set of the 2200s built by Bud. This is the old Chicago Northwestern Center, that's CNNW's main office building. This is at Clinton and Lake on the Lake Street L. These are Boeing-built 2400 series cars. They were delivered near the bicentennial period, so they came in a red, white, and blue bicentennial paint motif. If you don't like this view, I got him coming from the other direction. He's going out westbound on the Lake Street L. Now we're on to the Skokie Swift. This is out at Skokie, triplet car, articulated triplet car set number 52. Skokie basically is now a third rail operation. They used to have a code change point where they came off the third rail and put the sliding pantograph and raised it midpoint. For whatever reason, I guess they didn't want to maintain the overhead capability in the cars and give more fleet, fleet flexibility in assigning any CTA L car to the run. They made the entire line third rail electric, and therefore any car the CTA fleet could run on it. So gone are the days of the pantograph changeover. Did a little bit of other diesel commuter rail fanning on the RTA, Regional Transit Regional Transportation Authority. This is an ex-Milwaukee Road F40C with Milwaukee Road stainless steel bilevels, gallery coaches, I should say, passing Mayfair Tower. Mayfair governed the junction at grade between two-track Milwaukee Road Main Line and the three-track Chicago Northwestern, which you'll see in the next slide.
Ron, we just got a question on what scanner do you use?
Used a Kodak slide and scan. It's a relatively new device. It's I got it through Amazon for $159. Boosting the total purchase price to $177 gave me two 32 gigabyte SD cards. One of them was high speed. So I took the 177 deal, and it scans pretty well. A few of the slides I had to go and color adjust with a photo adjuster in my phone that I have that's packaged in with my cell phone, and adjusted the colors further. What I found is Kodachromes hold the best, but even then with the Kodachromes, they do have a slight shift in color over the years. Very, very slight. The Ektachromes I shot, anything more than 30 years of age, started getting a blue shift, and you have to add in a tint adjuster, adding some pink. So some of the slide scans you see here have a little bit of a pinkish sky. That's basically because the slide itself was very, very blue, and I was trying to compensate. That's about the best I can really do with them. Unfortunately, or actually fortunately, I've been scanning these slides this past winter diligently to try and get them all scanned before they start fading. And it's a good thing I did, because a lot of my Ektachromes from 1970s and the early 1980s are already starting to color shift. The little story behind why I use Ektachrome, not Kodachrome, it had to do with basically my dad was chief photographer at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he had an access to a free supply of Ektachrome 50 tungsten. You stick an 85B filter in it, it dropped the ASA down to 40, and it shot just almost like outdoor Ektachrome. The reason for the free film was at the museum, they were so precise with the studio photography, all the art objects there. They would actually order bricks of film from Kodak, all the same lot production number. They would test them on a sliding color scale, and all the photographers and staff knew how to adjust the pictures and adjust for different compensations, whatever they had to do. And as the lot ran low, they would order another brick, and rather than waste time with using up the old supply of film, they junked it. So rather than have the thing land up in a dumpster, Dad helped himself to about a dozen rolls per brick that they were throwing out, and lo and behold, I had a free source of film. I didn't have that kind of money back in those days. So basically, a free source of film I wasn't going to turn down, but going fast forward 20, 30, 40 years into the future, the Ektachromes are not holding as well.
Ron, can we ask you one other thing? Can you unshare your screen and reshare, please?
Yeah, I see those red marks on the side here.
Yeah.
Okay. Reshare again?
And just reshare.
Okay. Done. Excellent.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. So anyways, that's the story there. Talking about rail fans that didn't have any money. Here's a little quick story. They're not in this presentation, but once upon a time when I was going to Harrison, New Jersey, the path fare was 30 cents. We went out, got off on and off at Harrison for free on the Newark bound direction. They didn't charge a fare. There was no turnstile there, but you had to pay 30 cents to get back to go the opposite direction. Well, to us, 30 cents basically meant we were on the way home. There was no way of coming back to the westbound, to the Newark bound platform. Back in those days, I didn't really have too many 30 cents to spare. So unfortunately, I have a whole bunch of slides from the wrong sun angle. If I could go back in time now, I would have kicked myself and said, spend the 30 cents. Anyways, moving right along, Mayfair Tower. These are RTA, Regional Transportation Authority F40 PHs with RTA painted gallery coaches. These used to be Chicago and Northwestern. You can see the CNNW 3-track main, Mayfair Tower in the background, and the 2 Milwaukee Road tracks in the foreground. Mayfair you can't get up to anymore. This is not sure what location this is, but this is basically showing what the RTA did with the E units from Chicago Northwestern when they were repainted. And that's the RTA's initial paint scheme. This is over at Morton Grove going up the Milwaukee Road line. F40 PHs and galleries, stainless steel cars. The Rock Island had Core 10 steel gallery coaches. They painted them Rock Island red, and they used to have Rock Island locomotives, but they were replaced by RTA F40. So at least I got the coaches all in unison, but not the engine. This is taken from the 12th Street Roosevelt Avenue Bridge, overlooking the entrance to LaSalle Terminal. That's the F40 pushing its way in. This whole area is completely redeveloped. You would never recognize it in a million years. This is at the LaSalle Terminal. This again, this is also completely rebuilt. This is the way it used to look. And then rounding out the diesel haul commuter services in and around Chicago. This is a Burlington CP&Q, and then Burlington Northern, now Metro's Aurora line. It's an E8 with Burlington stainless steel gallery coaches going westbound through Stone Avenue. The interesting thing about this line is even during the rush hour, they intermix commuter service with huge 100-car freight trains. The dispatchers that dispatch the BN Aurora line are extremely skilled. They know how to intermix freight trains, heavy slow freight trains, Amtraks, as well as Metro Aurora line commuter trains, and they very rarely derail each other. It's amazing. This is some of the heritage services they have. Metro calls it the Heritage Corridor going down towards Joliet. Used to be run by the Norfolk Southern. And the other train over here is Conrail out to Valparaiso. I'm not sure the line even goes to Valparaiso anymore, but these are some Conrail Jeep units, basically freight switchers. And they're hauling some old Pennsylvania Railroad coaches, hand-me-downs to Conrail. Back in 1992, I had a friend of mine that worked for Metra, and he gave me a grand tour of the facilities. And part of the tour, I was able to get into the BNSF, or the Burlington Northern passenger coach yard, south of Roosevelt Road. And these are some pictures I have of the Burlington E8s coming in and out of Union Station. This is one of the Winnebagos, F69s that I think they called them F59s. I'm not sure, but yeah, Amtrak called them F69s. In any case, the nickname of these things were Winnebagos because they kind of look like a Winnebago motorhome. Again, this is at the BN yard. This is up in Highland Park, RTA gallery cars. Notice the left is coming at me. CNNW, if you ever go railfan in Chicago, just be aware Chicago Northwestern runs left-handed, so be warned. This is a tower just north that controls the north end access to Union Station. That's the Lake Street L underneath, and here comes a Milwaukee service commuter train with an F40C in Metra colors in the 1990s. I believe this one was going up towards Kenosha. Now we're going to get out of the commuter trains and go back to CTA rapid transits. Here's some 6000 L cars on the farewell to the 6000 spam cans trip sometime back in the 1990s. This is coming into Sedgwick, northbound. We had a photo stop on the Green Line at 63rd Street at Cottage Grove. This is the line that used to go over the Truss Bridge that went beyond into on the other side of the IC main. You saw that earlier in the Chicago South Shore shot. That bridge has now been torn out, removed, and a line truncates before it reaches the IC main. This is over at Armitage, southbound Spam Can 6000. And this is a Ravenswood train, 6 cars, I should say, 6-car Ravenswood train. If anybody that's tuned in from CERA or anybody from the ERA knows what the location is, I'd be more than glad to find out. It's in the middle of an S-curve, 2 tracks. I don't know the location, unfortunately. I didn't write it down. But it's an interesting shot with the train in the middle of an S-curve. This is westbound PCC car number 20. I believe these are the cars that used to be used on the old Evanston Express. They were double-digit numbered. And when they were redistributed through the whole fleet and the Evanston got new cars, these rolled up their final years in the rest of the CTA system. This is over here on the Douglas line at 18th. You can see the medical center way in the background before you get to that ramp going down towards Racine. This is over here, somewhere on Lake Street L, again 6000, with their former Evanston cars. You can see there are 3-car units over here. Single cars lashed up in the concept of 3. Somewhere on the Lake Street L. Again, I wish I knew where it was. If anybody knows, please let me know. The middle tracks looks abandoned. It's only 3 tracks, so it's not up and down on the State Street elevated going towards Howard. It's only 3 tracks, so I'm not sure exactly where it is in the Lake Street L. This is over at Kedzie on the Douglas line. We had a photo stop on that Spam Can farewell trip. And here's a 2600 rolling up next to it. These 2600s were built by Bud in trying to remember, I think it might have been 1982, somewhere around about 82 to 80, 80 to 82, 83 period. That's when they were built. It's hard to imagine these are the cars that are going to be replaced by the CERC cars. Here's another one of these former Evanston line cars at Quincy and Wells on the west side of the loop. Again, this is that farewell trip. When I was with my friend from Metro, he had some contact at CTA, and he was a supervisor in the CTA operations and was kind enough to take me around on a couple of behind-the-scenes tours. And this is taken from the tower at Wilson of a regular service train going down the street, the State Street L from Howard down towards Lake Dan Ryan, 95th. This is taken from the tower, one view, and then looking south at Wilson Yard. This is, believe it or not, is an elevated yard and shop over street level. Notice the street down below, and notice the elevation of the shop and the entire yard layout in the leads. And this is Amtrak's F69 Winnebago when it was in the Amtrak tricolor scheme. You saw this engine previously towing away the ICE train at New Haven, painted up especially for the ICE train demo. But this is what it looked like before. This is south of Chicago Union Station, heading on the run towards Detroit. This is the Amtrak's International. 2 train sets are assigned to this service. One is an Amtrak F40 and Amfleet coaches, and the other one is a Via F40 with Via LRC coaches. And these are the coaches that were in demo service up and down the Northeast Corridor. They have the FRA thick Lexan windows. The window frames are beefed up. They're not glass like Via Rail has. They're not breakable glass for exits. Via had no real use for these coaches once the experiment on the Northeast Corridor was over. So Amtrak rechained them and used them for its international service that went through Port Huron between Toronto and Chicago. I had the privilege of riding this line back in 1991. I think the line is gone now. Then leaving Chicago, we're now in Cleveland. These are the Cleveland airporter cars built by Pullman Standard in the 1960s. Cleveland, believe it or not, everyone likes to make fun of Cleveland as the butt of all jokes, but they were basically the first city with rapid transit that had direct one-seat access from downtown to the airport. That's something New York City will never accomplish, unless they extend path down to Newark. But that's New Jersey. I'm talking about the New York airports. Anyways, these are the airporter cars. That's in at West 25th Street, Ohio City, just after the train that is heading towards Public Square downtown. It's going away from me. This is one of the old St. Louis cars built by St. Louis Car Company cars built in 1955. These are the original cars that were built for the Cleveland CTS Rapid. And both classes of cars were retired by these Tokyo cars built in 1984-85. Again, at the same location. He's actually wrong railing it due to whatever work orders were in effect that day. He's actually coming at me. And in the shops, we had the ERA had a shop tour years and years ago, back in the, I think it was the 1982 convention, I think. We had an opportunity to go inside the CTS Cleveland RTA shops and had a lineup of the St. Louis and the airporter cars sitting next to each other. So here's a little comparison of the vintage fleet that's no more. I was in Cleveland for another visit. He had another charter. It was a Pittsburgh-Cleveland combination convention. I think this is at 55th Street. And if you notice, the train is, the operation here is left-handed, and there's a reason for it. There's high-level platforms to service the rapid transit cars on either side. Now, what we had was a low-level platform Breda LRV. And back in the day, they used to run PCCs through here before the Bredas took over. Now, if you ran left-handed, the PCCs would have the doors opened up on a low-level platform placed between the two tracks. So it was more effective to run these things left-handed than the normal right-handed operation. On either side of the station, there was a switchover where they went back to right-hand running.
Someone who's on might remember, Ron, we had an ERA convention that combined Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Right, that's what I'm referring. That's when these pictures are taken, during that convention. These two. I think it was 1982. Because 81 was Philadelphia, and I think 82 was the combination Cleveland-Pittsburgh. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. 80 was I think 80 was San Francisco, 81 was Philadelphia, and then 82 was this combination. 83, I think, was Chicago. Anyways, I was in Cleveland in the summer of 81 before I started work. I just finished grad school. I took a couple of weeks off to do a Midwestern tour, and that was the summer they were testing out the then brand new Breda LRVs. So these are test trains I was catching, but I was actually out there to catch the PCC. Somebody was kind enough to let me inside the Breda to take a picture of the interior. This is before these cars ever carried a single revenue passenger. But I was really out in Cleveland to capture the PCCs, before they were retired. And they were in various paint schemes. This is the final paint scheme that they had for the RTA. By then, they had already converted the line instead of trolley poles. They had already converted everything to catenary. They started sticking pantographs on top of the PCCs. This is a set of PCCs in its pure original form. You can see trolley poles in the back and retriever ropes. This is at Coventry Station. They just rebuilt the entire line for the LRVs. And you can see the new cat poles, the new catenary, the new tracks. And this is a transition period where they're still running the PCCs. This is at Coventry on the Green Line, heading out towards Green Road. This is at the famous Shaker Square station, where the green and the blue line split apart. This is again the train heading out to Shaker Square instead of Green Road. And then from Cleveland, we moved down to Pittsburgh. Again, most of these shots are shot during the '82 convention. I think it was '82 for the ERA. This scene no longer exists with trolley operations over the Smithfield Street Bridge. They use a Conrail bridge to get across nowadays. But this is the day when the Smithfield Street Bridge was still carrying PCCs from downtown over to Station Square by the PLE terminal and then on into outer Pittsburgh. And if you don't like it from this angle, we'll go to the other end of the bridge and shoot from this end. Pittsburgh was a PCC's enthusiast dream city. Hardly, with the exception of a few basic paint schemes that the PAT had for themselves, there was a variety of paint schemes by corporate sponsors, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, Coca-Cola, insurance companies, and whatnots. And it got to the point where just about every other PCC had its own unique paint scheme. So if you were of the ilk to try and get the entire fleet, it was called good luck. This is American Express's advertisement card. This is actually during the fan trip, and we stopped in the middle of the busway, of all things. I think the busway was not in operation that weekend. It was the holiday weekend. Otherwise, I really can't imagine us being allowed to get off the PCCs to go and take pictures like this. Can you imagine if a bus came around at high speed? This is at Station Square. This is the standard PA Transit paint scheme. High-level platforms. The PCCs stopped all the way down here where the cursor is. They would let passengers board in the light down here and then continue on to downtown. Same thing over here. That's another PA Transit paint scheme variation. I call it the Woolly Bear, for obvious reasons, with the white band in the middle. And this is the original Pittsburgh, the standard paint scheme they had before they went to the more colorful. This is that near Castle Shannon on street running. And this is out in the 47L library line before it was rebuilt. Notice the wonderful condition of the ties and track. At least they maintain the crossings with good rubberized coatings. It's a very hilly line. It takes a little skill to operate these PCCs up and down these things, especially on wet rail. The ERA hosted or centered itself in Pittsburgh at the William Penn Hotel, and this is the passing PA Transit PCC in front of the Convention Hotel, and there's a few of the conventioners on the left side. And they just opened up the Pittsburgh subway, and how they handled it with the PCCs back then was every station platform had a low-level portion where the PCCs could, come in one at a time, do their station business, then leave the station. And the high levels would be reserved only for the new LRVs from Siemens. Speaking of the new LRVs, here's a comparison of the new versus the old. The PCC is doing a station business on its low-level platform, and the LRV is up on the high-level platform at Station Square. This is in the inbound direction. heading downtown. This is on Route 42, closer in from Castle Shannon, going down. I forget the name of the street, but the station's name is Hampshire.
It might be Broadway.
I think Broadway was further up. I was trying to look at a map because they don't really post the station names that clearly. I'm gonna try and zoom in on this station sign over here, this brown one. Begins with an S, whatever it is. Styles. It's an S. Sims. That's what it is. That's the name of the station. And again, near the, I think this is near Belasco Station in Pittsburgh, going down the hill. Beautiful houses here. Oops. Now, this shot was just happenstance. I just happened to catch this picture by pure luck. That particular day, I was driving around like a madman, chasing the last day of the GG1. That I think it was a Saturday. They had the GG1 farewell, and as I was driving around, going from one photo location to another, lo and behold, here are these light rail cars being trucked out to who knows where. And these are obviously Siemens cars from Siemens going to Pittsburgh. And these are the test pilot vehicles going out there. I just happened by luck to catch them on the streets of Elizabeth, New Jersey, coming out of Fort Newark. Going back to Pittsburgh commuter rail, this is the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Pittsburgh PAT train, because Port Authority of Pittsburgh have taken over the service. But this is at the old PNLE terminal down by Station Square.
Ron?
Yes.
I think this is the V&O line. I think this is on the other side.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember.
If I remember correctly, the PAT train ran on the V&O.
Okay. Because I know this set, 6690 and 6691, the entire push-pull set, coaches included, landed up in Shoreline East. When this operation quit, CDOT bought the whole, the whole set, lock, stock, and barrel, painted them up CDOT, and brought them over to Shoreline East.
Also, if you look at the picture, you'll see that the parkway is next to it. This is on the city side, not on the Station Square side.
Oh, it's on the okay. You know, to tell you the truth, my memory fades out. I don't even know where this picture was taken. I know it was in Pittsburgh, and it's the old PAT Pittsburgh PAT train, but that's about all I remember of it. Thanks for reminding me. And that's the other end. That's the cab car. And because the locomotive was an XG, I think it was an XGMNO locomotive, it had no HEP. This cab car had a head-end power generator on one end of the coach. The engineer was all by himself up front. The HEP generator was right behind him, and it was half the car was a coach compartment. I remember riding it like that. I said, "Oh my God, that poor engineer is all the way up front, isolated." Okay, now we're going to continue on in Pennsylvania, but go further east, all the way to Philadelphia. We are now on the Sharon Hill and Media lines, which is now known as the Route 101 and 102. And in the background, the Type 80 car is passing my 1980 Oldsmobile Omega, which is still in my garage back home in Queens. It's going to be 41 years old this year. But this is when the car was only a year and a half old. I still drive that car. It's got 177,000 miles in it. And this is when the St. Louis Car Company trolleys for the Media Sharon Hill. And this is a very young me in 1982. And on the other side, taking orders with the SEPTA operator is ERA member and trip organizer back in the 1980s, Glenn Smith. Glenn was notorious for setting up some very wild photo stops on the Sharon and Media Hill lines, namely in the middle of trestles and viaducts. It's something that would never be permitted nowadays. But anyway, this is a Type 80, and this is the same type of car, Type 80, and this is one of Glenn Smith's famous photo stops. in the middle of the bridge that goes over the Conrail tracks, just outside of 69th Street. This is a posed shot. I think it was Friends of Philadelphia Trolleys was running this trip, and we posed the Kawasaki double-ended K car underneath the Alden Center Station, and waited for the train to come by because somebody had the timetable and said, you know, there's a SEPTA regional coming through in the next couple of minutes. So we sat there as long as we could, and lo and behold, the train showed up. We got an over and under shot. You'll see a few more of these later on. The guys down there are pretty good at setting this up. This is a Philadelphia transportation company, Peter Witt, on the streets of Philadelphia. Locations unknown. During the springtime, obviously, with the springtime foliage. This is a charter trip. They had the Route 23 PCCs, a Peter Witt, and a K car all together in the same fan trip. That's the That's the Frankfurt elevated in the background. This is actually a semi-posed shot. This is during, I believe, it was the ERA convention of '82. They ran the Peter Witt, a PCC, and the K car. The PCC is to the right outside of the frame of the picture. But what happened was somebody neglected to read their bulletin orders, and they shut off the power for the catenary at the bridge all the way up the line. They had to get a hold of the power director to turn the juice back on. But in the middle of the whole time, we basically ran onto this bridge, and the cars all went no power, dark, no lights, no nothing. So we were stuck there in 100-degree heat. So myself and a few other intrepid rail fans stood up on the guardrail of the roadway here and waited for a northbound Amtrak. And lo and behold, we were rewarded. We got a nice northbound AAM 7 and AM fleets and the SEPTA equipment. The only thing I could have done with that was that red car, but at least it wasn't blocking the whole Peter Witt. I managed to get it before. I managed to time the Amtrak with that red car and not have it ruin the picture. We also ran a PCC training trolley, and we had that posed next to a regular service PCC. Again, you can see it was typical ERA fan trip weather, pouring buckets rain. This is the old Penn's Landing trolley line that they had down by the waterfront. This is a Type 80 that's been restored to the Philadelphia Suburban Transportation Company paint. That's the Type 80s when they were originally painted. That's Ben Franklin Bridge in the background. Unfortunately, the Penn's Landing trolley museum didn't last. It's now part of the Friends of the Philadelphia Trolleys when they were evicted out of their Pierside warehouse. And that's one of the oldest cars that ran on the Philadelphia and Western. That's also been restored to its old paint scheme, same location. And as the Norristown line aged out and the Norristown and Stratford cars started giving out from just plain old age, SEPTA basically began to supplement and eventually replace the old Stratford and Bullet car fleet with hand-me-down cars from other transit agencies. Initially, they bought a bunch of Chicago 6000 series PCC L cars and outfitted them to match the high-level platforms in the Norristown. So there were various fan trips run with these cars. Here's Chicago, a SEPTA painted Chicago PCC with SEPTA Norristown cars. This is when they were first delivered in from Chicago. They still had the Chicago green and white with a little SEPTA logo on the side. And then here's the Chicago PCC series car, painted up SEPTA. And at this point, the M4 cars were starting to come in on the Market-Frankford. So that basically allowed SEPTA to bump down some of the Market-Frankford Bud cars built in the early 1960s to Norristown service. So they put extenders on the side of the car bodies to make them match up with the platforms in the Norristown, because the Market-Frankford cars and the PCCs were understandably narrower than the Norristown high-speed cars. So they put these platform extenders up there, just like the Myrtle Avenue L cars. So here's two of them side by side. Another one during a fan trip side by side. And speaking of the Market-Frankford L cars, this is over at 52nd Street pre-rebuilding with the original Market-Frankford. Well, they're not original, but they're the 1960s cars. And of course, I arrived on the scene far too late to see the original Market-Frankford L cars. I never did see them. Anyways, they had R22 style drop sash windows up front, which made for some interesting riding. This is at another train coming into 52nd Street up the hill from 46. Downtown Philly's in the background. And this is before the elevator was completely rebuilt. This is what it used to look like. And during that time period, they were starting to rebuild the Frankfurt L, which is the northern or northeastern half of the Market-Frankfurt L. I'll get to that picture in a couple of minutes. This is at Milburn, just short of 69th Street Terminal. And now I'm up on the Frankfurt L, and this is what the L used to look like on the north end, heading up towards Frankfurt itself. This is the unrebuilt elevated, and this is the elevated as it looks now, totally rebuilt. You look at the old versus the new. And of course, when you're in Philadelphia, you can't leave out the Broad Street subway. During the 1980s, SEPTA decided to spend some money and restore one of the original Philadelphia subway cars to its as delivered splendor. And he also got a hold of a couple other subway cars, including a bridge car that was inherited from Patco that they had tossed away. And they had a museum train for a brief period back in the early mid-1980s. We ran a bunch of fan trips up and down the Broad Street subway. Unfortunately, all three cars are sitting in Fern Rock Yard, rusting away. The paint is all faded. They're in bad shape. I doubt if they'll ever run again, but here it is at the Fern Rock itself. This is one of the subway cars that they usually look. These are actually cleaned up from by the David Gunn years. I remember going to Philadelphia back in 1976, and these things were completely covered in graffiti. And then they brought in David Gunn, and whatever the politics are about David Gunn, some people love him, some people hate him. But I will say one thing: he cleaned up each system he came to. He cleaned up. If they had a graffiti problem, he cleaned it up. These are the Kawasaki cars built in the early 1980s that replaced all the Broad Street subway cars. These are one of the highest speed rapid transit cars in North America. They top out at 65 miles an hour in the Broad Street subway and the express services. New York City Transit, by comparison, unless it's running on CBTC computer control, they're limited to about 44, 45 miles an hour. These go 65 miles an hour in the tunnels every single day on weekday rush hours. This is at Wallingford with some SEPTA painted MP54s. This is their final paint scheme before they were retired. Reading had a whole series of farewell to the Blue Liners. These are ex-Reading Railroad original electrics. And this is at Chestnut Hill East. Again, perfect fan trip weather, pouring rain. The main thing was to get the images. This is at Reading Terminal, which is now called Jefferson Station, downtown Philadelphia. This is the Reading Blue Liners after they turned at the end of the trip. I ran up and over to the overpass and got some shots here, and ran down to the platform and got the other side shot from the opposite platform before the train pulled out. This is at Glenn's Mills, the Reading Blue Liners. And over here at Media, again in pouring rain. And then we have ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Bud Silverliners. I think these are Silverliner 2s, number 245. The 2s had basically the number boards and the headlights and a solid stainless steel weld and rivet bar right here. The Silverliner 3s had a different layout to them. You'll see that in another picture. These are Silverliner 4s. They're still plying the rails. If SEPTA ever gets the money together, they're probably going to replace them with Silverliner 6s. They may look modern, but these cars are rapidly aging old too. They're well in excess of 30 years old. And overhead is an N5 electric Norristown car at Norristown Station. This is the Silverliner 3. You can see the difference over here. There is no lit number board. There's only a painted number on one side of the headlights, and it has this little eyebrow forehead effect. That's a Silverliner 2. That's one of the 8 cars that were assigned to airport service. And they were painted especially with the yellow banding at the ends and the along the window band. This is at 30th Street Upper. AEM 7s with Norristown N5 LRV overhead at Norristown. And then we're going to move further down the corridor. We're now at Rogers Avenue on the Baltimore MTA heavy rail rapid transit line. These cars are built by Bud / now Transit America and now completely bankrupt. They ordered 100 cars in conjunction with Miami, which you'll see in a few minutes. They're identical except for a few minor customized figures, customized features. But this is the very first application and probably the last application of what they call fleet commonality. Somebody came to their senses back in the early 1980s and said, why are all rapid transit agencies building their own custom-made subway cars at huge amounts of money? Why not revive the old PCC concept and build a standardized subway car that everybody can use? So Bud went ahead and built them. Miami and Baltimore were the only 2 takers. And shortly thereafter, Bud went out of business. So go figure. Anyway, here's the Baltimore version at Rogers Avenue. This is over Baltimore again at West Cold Spring Station. And ASCA Brown Boveri built a whole bunch of very wide LRVs, which are still plying the rails to this date. This is on Howard Street, downtown Baltimore. And they also have MARC system. That's the Baltimore commuter rail system. It goes from Perryville, Maryland, all the way down to Washington Union Station through Baltimore. They bought themselves a whole bunch of Nippon Sharyo pushboat coaches. Essentially, these are the same car bodies that the Chicago South Shore line uses, except these don't have pantographs and no motors. They're strictly coaches. But the car body is virtually identical. This is at Bewey Airport, Thurgood Marshall Airport Station on the Northeast Corridor. And that's one of the 4 AEM 7s that MARC had. Later on, they purchased 6 HHP-8s for an electric locomotive fleet of 10. When Amtrak retired the HHP-8s and the AEM 7s, MARC decided to go diesel only. Not only just to give themselves total fleet flexibility for each consist, they can assign it to Camden Line, Brunswick Line, or Northeast Corridor Penn Line, and not worry about having the wrong locomotive on the consist. But also the other driving reason why MARC got away from electrification was to put a pantograph like this up in the air, and draw current from Amtrak, Amtrak would charge you a ridiculous amount of money. So believe it or not, despite the fact that you have electric catenary readily available right overhead, Mark is running diesels up and down because it's cheaper. Go figure. Speaking of Mark diesels, this is one of the GP39H2s at Pointer Rocks in Maryland. This line is also shared by the Amtrak Capital, which you'll see in a couple of minutes. 73, locomotive 73, I believe is also that unit that was involved in the massive fire collision with the Capitol a number of years later. This was taken in 1994. The reason why I remember the date was as I was driving back from this Baltimore trip, the radio, I was busy rail fanning all day, but as I was driving back up to New York from Baltimore, the radio waves were all abuzz with this slow motion car chase involving O.J. Simpson. So you can date the pictures of that time period. Anyways, Mark was running short of engines, and they were known for being a rolling museum, basically taking any equipment that anybody declared surplus and excess and putting it to good use down there. In the back, you can see some converted RDCs, which eventually landed up in the VRE service, and eventually some of them landed up in Metro North. But these are Burlington Northern E8s, displaced from Metro or the RTA by the F40s. So of course Mark took them. So it makes some interesting photos here. BN E units coming through Pointer Rocks. This is a GP40WH2. These engines have a little bit of a history to them as well. After serving out the years on Mark, they were replaced by the new Motive Power MP36s. And these exact same engines, a lot of them went up to Motive Power and were rebuilt. They are now serving on Sunrail as part of their 10 locomotive fleet over down here in Florida. So these engines eventually landed up in Florida. Here's Amtrak's Capital with F40s and the now defunct head-end traffic mail and package service cars. They don't run them anymore. And moving further south, we're now in Atlanta. These are the Hitachi 1985 CQ311 cars built by Hitachi. This is a second generation of cars that Marta ordered in. The original ones you'll see a little bit later on. They were built by Franco-Belge back in the 1970s. But this is over here at Lindbergh Center. And these are the Franco-Belge 1978 built subway cars. Not sure exactly what station this is. I was trying to read the station sign over here, but it's blurry. But you can see some very minute differences between the cars here. Very minor differences, but they are all due to be replaced at some point. If Atlanta gets the money, they're going to replace the CQ310s from Franco-Belge 1978, the Hitachis from the 1980s, and the last set of cars, I forget the builder, but they were called CQ312s. And the whole lot, stock and barrel, is going to be replaced by a whole new fleet of cars sometime. They're estimating right now, assuming funding comes through, which is actually pretty promising with the Biden administration, probably a fleet replacement you're looking at sometime in the mid-2020s. So get your shots of these cars while you can. You got about 2 or 3 more years before plans are finalized to get rid of these cars and retire them. Then moving even further south, speaking of Transit America / Bud, with the common subway car design, you have Miami Metro Dade Rail coming down into Overton, coming northbound, heading north from downtown, from Government Center. You can see the Metro Mover guideways down below, and the Metro Rail cars, Miami Metro Rail, as they were painted originally in their original color scheme. This is at Vizcaya. I'm glad I took these shots back in the late 1980s when the line first opened. I came back to this location about 2 or 3 years ago to try and recreate the shot with new cars from Breda Hitachi. and discovered to my chagrin that these trees over here that were way below the tracks are now above the station canopy, and it ruins the whole shot. So at least enjoy at least you can enjoy this picture from 1988. This is at Vizcaya Station going north. This is over at Tri-Rail. This is a transfer stop between Metro Rail and Tri-Rail commuter rail down below. This again is the original paint scheme of the Miami-Dade Metro. And this is their the first generation of Miami Metro mover. These cars are all now completely long gone and retired, and they were replaced by I believe it's Bombardier Mark IIs, I think. These are the old Mark I cars. Speaking of Tri-Rail, these are the Bombardier-built Tri-Rail commuter cars. Tri-Rail basically, in a brief nutshell, was put together by the authorities quickly to offer a supplemental commuter rail service between West Palm and Miami, while I-95 was being totally torn up and replaced. That's I-95 on the side, by the way. It doesn't look anything like that now. It's a super highway. Looks more like the Jersey Turnpike. Anyways, you notice the cars are painted up Go Transit. The feeling was that once I-95 was rebuilt, if the commuter rail ridership became a bust, these cars would be returned to Canada and Go Transit would buy them. But as it was, fortunately, the service took off and service maintained and still running today. This is at the old Pompano Beach station. All the stations, for the most part, look the same. Same miniature canopy, totally useless in Florida's rain, but it is what it is. This is an F40 PHL. A couple of them are still around, but they basically have all these new locomotives now. I think they're also from Motive Power. This is one of the Bombardier cab cars. This is at the Tri-Rail Metro Rail Exchange at the Miami Metro-Dade Rail Rapid Transit overhead, and one of the Bombardier cab cars. Then we're going to head west. This is San Antonio Sports Center. Cotton built Southern Pacific's St. Louis Southwestern nosed GP40 hauling a Amtrak Jenny, an F40, and a Sunset Limited. And I was here to basically ride the Texas Eagle back up to Dallas and on to St. Louis and Chicago just to get the route mileage. And Jeff Ehrlitz, I think you were with me that day. Anyways, this is before they split the train at the San Antonio to become the Sunset to New Orleans and the Texas Eagle going north to Dallas. On the same year, 1995, I flew down to Orlando and rode the Sunset from Orlando all the way to New Orleans, backtrack on the Greyhound to Mobile, Alabama on an overnight Greyhound bus, and caught the next day's sunset coming in, 2 days later, I should say, the sunset coming in underneath the convention center in Mobile, Alabama. Hopefully this service returns sometime this year or next. Keep your fingers crossed. While I was in New Orleans, I was able to catch the old Melbourne W2 cars on the riverfront line next to Jackson Brewery. This is one of the rebuilt Pearly Thomas cars. They painted up for the services on the river line. It didn't really have ADA compliance. They do now with the new cars. They're manufactured new to the old look with clerestory roofs. But these are the original Pearly Thomas cars. They grabbed a few of these cars to supplement the W2s and institute a service in the river line. This is down by the Riverwalk. They're right next to the convention center. This is the Melbourne W car, W tram, and that's the Pearly Thomas rebuild or repaint. And speaking of Pearly Thomas, these are one of the original Pearly Thomases, car number 900. It's the class car coming up from underneath what I call 21 Oaks on the St. Charles line. I nicknamed the place 21 Oaks. It's not far from Loyola University. It's just what do you call it? It's west of Loyola, heading towards the Carrollton turn and the shops. This is inside the tree, the canopy of trees. Amazingly, most of these trees survived Hurricane Katrina, which is incredible. That's the interior of the Turley Thomases with the old-fashioned fare boxes. They now have new fare boxes. When we were riding the Texas Eagle, we put in a long stop at St. Louis, and I ran across from the temporary Amtrak station and caught the St. Louis light rail. Got one shot of it, and then ran back to Amtrak. So this is my one St. Louis shot. Then moving upwards towards Buffalo, this is the original paint scheme of the Niagara Frontier NFTA, Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority light rail, or the Niagara, the Buffalo trolley, basically. Interestingly, it's at grade downtown, and in tunnel in the suburbs. It's reversed. But that's just the way they built it. I guess it was too much money to try and build a deep bore tunnel downtown. And I guess the way the line cuts across some of the properties on the outskirts, it was better to build a tunnel rather than have eminent domain demolishments as a result. So this is the way, this is the compromise. Back then and until very recently, this street was a transit way where it was only buses and transit vehicles. From what I understand, this street has now been opened up to vehicular traffic in general, which is not a good thing. So now you're going to have, I could literally drive my car down the street with impunity. It's not right. This is supposed to be a transit way. I'm sorry. This is at the last stop past the convention center and down towards the fancy hotels, not far from Buffalo Exchange Street. Night shot. And now we're going to go over to Boston real quick. These are the old Blue Line tunnel cars. They were built in the 1920s, like 1923 by Pullman Standard, also called the 0500 class. This is on the farewell to the old tunnel cars fan trip. I think that's Jimmy Mattina in the front window. God rest his soul. Anyways, that's the interior, wooden bench seating. Kind of reminds me of the old Staten Island Ferry, the original old Staten Island ferries with the wooden bench seating. These are the St. Louis car 1951 supplement cars when they extended the Blue Line beyond the airport. And they ordered these cars up, and until the late 1970s, they ran this and the tunnel cars in mixed service. You'd have one set of these and one set of tunnel cars. Of course, they weren't mechanically or electrically compatible, but they ran at the same time on the same line. That's the interior of these cars. St. Louis. They were both called 0500s. And then this is what replaced them from Hawker Siddeley. They're called 0600s. And they ran for a brief period of time. And I guess because of the shoreline atmosphere and environment these cars are stored in and operated under, they didn't last nearly as long as their brethren on the Orange Line. And they rusted out rather quickly and were replaced sometime before 2010. But these are the cars back as they were in 1983, when they're still pretty new. That's the interior of the Hawker Siddeley's 0600s. And then we're going on to the red line. These are the Pullman Standard 1500 to 1600 brushed aluminum cars. Why they painted these cars eventually, I don't know. They basically were maintenance-free finish, but that's the way it goes, I guess. Perhaps it could have been graffiti that they had trouble removing the graffiti, so they figured putting shiny paint in it and just stripping the graffiti off the paint would be easier. I don't know. Anyway, this is at Braintree Terminal. This is at Charles, now MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital station. This is also in the original paint, and notice it's only a two-car train. Back in the 1970s, the ridership didn't really warrant anything more than 2 cars in the middle of the day. This is on the Longfellow Bridge over the Charles River. Also in the original paint, brushed aluminum scheme. And this is what the cars look like now with the red line paint. Again at Charles Station on the Longfellow Bridge. This is the original seating configuration of the Pullman Standard cars from the 1960s with the bus style seating. And later on, they said we need more capacity, so let's change the seats and install more poles and add standee capability. So this is what the cars look like now. They're all soon to be retired by a CRC fleet that's coming in slowly. So that's coming in fits and starts and fits as well. These are Pullman Standard 01400s from the 1950s. This is also on the Longfellow Bridge in their original paint scheme with the gold star front end with the blue and white. Again, in the original scheme, also at Charles Station before Charles Station was rebuilt. Then when they started rebuilding a lot of stuff and rehabilitating cars in the MBTA, these cars too got the red and white paint scheme treatment. So this is what these cars looked like before they were retired. They had a new set of cars from, I forget what company, I think it might have been Bombardier as well, but they were like 1700s and 1800s that replaced these cars outright. And again, CRC is going to replace everything. These are the interiors of the Pullman Standards after they've been rehabbed for red line service. The seats were never this color. They were a different color before. Moving on to the orange line, these are Pullman Standard 1950s old 1100s. This is at Forest Hill, not Hills, Hill. That's the southern terminus of the old Orange Line elevator. This is the Orange Line cars on the elevator itself. Very well maintained and painted elevators. It's a shame that structurally they couldn't take the weight of the new cars and they started needing rehabilitation. And they felt it was easier to follow the Northeast Corridor and go on that alignment and replace this line with a bus service. The neighborhoods that this line ran through have never been the same since. It tells you the importance of a rapid transit line. You got to keep it where it is. That's the interior of the Orange Line cars, the old Pullman cars. Then over to Mattapan Ashmont. This is one of the Mattapan Ashmont PCCs. And this is what replaced the cars in the Orange Line, and these cars are still serving on the line, albeit in a very rusted out condition right now, and about to be replaced by cars from CRC when they clear the derailment investigation at some point in the future. Orange Line over here in Boston, looking up the front window of an older train, all the way up north, where there's an interchange stop with the commuter rail. And from the parking garage just south of, along the northeast, as it approaches the northeast corridor, heading down towards Ruggles. And there's a commuter train next to it from the same parking garage. And here's a Type 5. More Type 5s during a fan trip. Beautiful fall foliage. Running on the Riverside line. Speaking of the Riverside line, here's some Boeing SLRVs. Park Street. I think the stop before this was Newton Highlands. Yeah, and then at Park Street, or Pack Street as they say in Boston. This is at the Newton Center. And that's an old B&A railroad station that's been converted. This is a Type 7 approaching Science Center coming out of the old Lechmere terminal. Lechmere is no longer going to be a terminal starting later on this year. It'll be a through stop on a totally new right-of-way north of Lechmere. when it goes up to Somerville. Then going north of the border, these are the old red Gloucester cars in Toronto, TTC. Southbound or Rosedale. Notice the operator is on the left-hand side, like an automobile. The reason for it, these cars were built in England. And in England, things run left-handed. So they never bothered to change the operator's position and left it as is. But these are the red Gloucester cars at Rosedale, going from Rosedale northward towards Eglinton. By that time, the last days of the Gloucester cars, they made it to the Eglinton West Spadina line extension up to Wilson. So I have some photos here of the old Gloucester cars coming out of Eglinton West at the south end of the Allen Expressway. Again, heading up towards Lawrence, or coming in from Lawrence, I should say, heading towards Eglinton. And as an experiment, TTC actually ordered 6 cars of the Gloucesters with aluminum car bodies, ostensibly to get away from the paint and also to make them much lighter. The Gloucesters were amazingly heavyweight steel cars. Their acceleration was very poor, and they drew a heck of a lot of power. So they decided, let's try an aluminum car body to see if we can save some weight and save some power. And they came up with these 6 cars, and lo and behold, they decided at the very end, we're not going to stay with these 60-foot cars. We're going to go to 75-foot cars, aluminum. And that gave birth to the M1s and the H series cars from Hawker Siddeley. That's the interior of the old Gloucester cars in service. Bullseye lights on the top. No fans of any sort. So it was basically forced air ventilation through the windows. You'd only get air circulating when the train moved. There were no fans overhead. This is what the Gloucester car, aluminum car experiment resulted in. Montreal Locomotive Works M1 series cars at Old Mill. These are North America's first 75-foot rapid transit cars for a major urban rapid transit system. Cars similar to this were built for Expo 67 as well. That's the interior of the old MLW cars. I couldn't color correct this anything further. This is about the best I can do. Sorry for the extreme blue shading. These are the Hawker Siddeley H4 class cars, based on the car number they have, car 5601. This is an H4 at Old Mill on a Bloor Danforth, or as they say in Toronto, TTC now, line 2. This is again line 2, Bloor Danforth, coming out of Victoria Park, going westbound. This one over here is an H4. And that's the interior of an H1. As you know, these are the original 75-foot Hawker Siddeley Bloor Danforth cars. You have 3 and 2 seating on the inside. Then the H2s came in with this two-tone, this two-tone color with the red and tan. And to increase standee room, the H4s were designed with 2 and 2 seating. So you look at these cars, basically here's the progression. You went from this to this to this. And then eventually it came with the bus seating bucket seats. And that's where it landed up with the H5s and H6s.
Ron, question for you. How did you manage to get those pictures with no passengers?
These, what you do is you have to have a lot of patience. You go to the last stop, you ride a train to the last stop, and hope that the train, the next departure is still sitting in the station and everybody's running for that train and everybody clears out of this one. In the moment that this train is cleared, I snap the picture, the other train leaves and people start flooding onto this. That was my trick, go to the last stop and hope. This is one of the T1, that's the last of the standard subway cars built for Toronto before they went to the solid 6-car sets of Toronto Rockets with sloping nose ends. These cars are now all reassigned to line 2, Bloor Danforth. This is it coming into Rosedale, coming up from Yonge Street. And we had several conventions. Back in '78, we ran the Peter Witts, and this is at Fleet Street Loop with Queens Wharf Lighthouse. And this is a short wit, or what we used to call the half wit. Car 2424 was a full wit. You'll see that later on. There's another standard Peter Witt. We had two of them on the charter that day. This is also on Queen Street, heading towards Long Branch. This is on High Park Loop at the end of the Carlton line on the west end of town. That's the College Street Carlton line. This is in High Park. That's Peter Witt. This is the full width. This is car 2424. That's the full length large Peter Witt. We chartered it at night. That's the interior of a Peter Witt. To get the interiors of trolleys during fan trips, you wait until lunch break and everybody gets off, then you take the picture. These are two PCCs. The one on the left is an A11 class, ex-Cleveland. The other one on the 4379, I think, is an A6. That's the interior of a TTC PCC way back in the 70s. And 1984, they had 150th anniversary of the city of Toronto, as well as Ontario, the province of Ontario. So they Toronto had the PCC gussied up in this blue scheme, and there was a CLRV that was painted up in shrink wrap with yellow to celebrate Ontario's 150th. That's the CLRV that's painted up for Ontario. That, by the way, is one of the original Swiss-built CLRVs. 6 of them were built over there before they were built in Thunder Bay. This is one of the original UTDC Swiss-built LRVs, CLRVs. There's a Peter Witt following it. This is on Dundas Street, heading towards Broadview Station, going east in Old Chinatown, Toronto. The reason why there's so few traffic is an early Sunday morning. This is on Humber. This is Queen Street going west. Queen Street is not that unbusy anymore. It's jam-packed with traffic. But this is back in the 1980s, so there wasn't that much traffic back then. This is on Bathurst, heading towards Exhibition, going south. Notice the cobblestone streets between the rails. And they still attach to it. This is on the Queensway at the end of nearing Humber Loop, heading out towards Long Branch. This car is actually heading east towards Roncesvalles. This is an ALRV. This is when they were originally delivered. The car number was 4900. Eventually, TTC renumbered them all down to the 4200s. But they came in delivered as 4900 with an orangey paint scheme. And we had chartered that vehicle as well. This is again down the Queensway, and this is at 4000 with the Ontario 150th anniversary at the Fleet Street Loop. This is the original test vehicle. ERA had a convention in 1978 in Toronto, and we were up in Hillcrest Shops, and they gave us a sample ride and look around of the UTEC's brand new CLRV prototype. So we got to ride the thing. This is the original paint scheme, how it came with the white doors. They believed that the white doors were more visible when they flipped open at nighttime for cars not to pass it. That didn't prove out. Anyways, that's the interior shot of these cars. This is the way the Swiss equipped the cars with the seating. Single seats, angled facing forward. For whatever reason, they decided not to go forward with this. They put the seating that was at the rear of the car throughout the entire vehicle. TTC also had trolley coaches. My camera arrived on the scene too late to see the Marmon Harringtons, but these are the old Canadian Flyer trolley coaches before they went extinct. This is in the original TTC as delivered paint scheme. This is north of Broadview. This is the TTC's final paint scheme for these buses or trolley coaches. That's the interior of the trolley coaches. Nice little setup. And this is the Go Transit F40. We were actually on the other side of this embankment waiting to shoot CLRVs and Peter Witts on the Queensway when somebody spotted this train roaring around the curve coming in from Oakville. So incredibly, the whole bunch of us ran across the 4-track main and went in the grass median between the QEW and the CN Go Transit main and got this shot. Must have given that poor engineer a heart attack seeing all these people crossing in front of him. This is an old F unit power control car, HEP, with the new Canadian Go Transit multi-levels. This is at Roncesvalles, by the way, near Roncesvalles Car House. There's a wonderful pedestrian bridge if you've never been there. There's no fencing, no high fencing, no railings, no gates. You can basically freely shoot off the overpass unobstructed. It's a good afternoon and morning shot as well for the morning and evening rush hours. Just keep in mind on Go Transit, the locomotives are always on the east end of the consist, so plan your photo shots accordingly. These are the original Go Transit coaches, by the way, dating back in 1967, Hawker Siddeley's. Very lightweight aluminum. Eventually, some of them landed up in Montreal to while out their days, and another set landed up in the Ontario Northland service. This is going up the Don Valley towards Barrie. And when they first delivered the multi-levels, they were a little short on cab cars, so they grabbed a few of the Go Transit Hawker Siddeley single-level cars and used them in mixed service. This is out in Guildwood. Again, I walked from Guildwood Station along the tracks and up this embankment and got some very wonderful shots. Again, I'm back in Roncesvalles on that pedestrian bridge. That's one of the original Go Transit single levels. You can't get this shot anymore. There used to be a signal maintainer's road that went up to a tower and a signal maintainer hut. The gate was never locked. You can walk up to there, right up to the tracks, and get your shots of these trains just like this. Last time I was there, somebody put a security fence there and it's locked up tighter than the drum, so this shot's not available anymore. Anyway, this is Go Transit's F-59s. And there's a Via Rail heading towards either Montreal or Ottawa, F-40s. And when I was out in Guildwood, the reason why I was out there, I wanted the Montreal-Toronto United Aircraft turbo train that Via was running once a day. So I got a shot of this. And for a while, going up the Ontario Northland, up the Don River Valley to pass towards Barrie, Ontario, they rented a Dutch train set, control cab, coaches, but they used an F unit as power. The Dutch motor unit didn't really pan out too well in the Canadian environment, so they used an F unit. But the coaches are all Dutch. You can see the Dutch control cab coming up through Willowdale, Ontario, which is a northern suburb of Toronto. My uncle lived up that way, so they would go rail fanning when I visited my uncle. Again, this is at Guildwood F units coming in from Montreal. These are Canadian National trains coming in from Windsor in the Via Rail service with CN power. Again, this is from that Roncesvalles bridge. Looking down from the CN tower, the old roundhouse. This is all completely redeveloped now. Part of it's a brewery, part of it is a Canadian Rail Museum. The rest of it's been redeveloped into housing. Moving further east, here's Canadian National Box Cab Electric from the CN Electric. They are now converting this line into a rapid transit line that's automated with no driver. We'll see how that works out, but the beauty of running railroad equipment in and out of Central Station is no more. That tunnel has now been converted to 100% rapid transit, and railroad operations no longer exist. But these are scenes from 1986 in Montreal. This is coming into Montreal. These are some steeple cabs, again in Montreal. And CN Electrics also had 3-car sets, married sets of triplets of EMUs dating back to the 1950s to supplement the coach services with locomotives. These are pictures of the EMUs. They replaced everything in 1995 with new EMUs. And it's a shame because the EMUs are going to have been retired and there's no place for them to go. Nobody wants them, but they're relatively new cars. They still got a lot of life left in them, but there's no future for them. Box cab electrics hauling out an RDC, going up to points unknown out in the CN system on VIA. VIA F units and long distance train intercity also hauled through the tunnels out of underneath Mount Royal. One shot I have of the MF67 class Montreal Metro cars. One of the lines I forget, to this day I think it still does, is one of the northern lines. Still does not operate with full-length consists. And back in the day, the only way to get Montreal Metro, they all ran 9-car trains. Full length of the platform was on this line. You get the 3-car set posed in the middle of the platform still. Anything else I would try would be blurred out.
Ron, that's line 5. It's
line 5
because they've never generated enough traffic on it.
Okay. Well, this must be line 5 way back in 1986.
Yeah, I'm an expat Montrealer, so.
Okay. This is taken at Point Clear. My cousins and aunt lived out here, and I was very fortunate in shooting the scene here. It was a dark, stormy morning, and it was a hole in the clouds. And just when the clouds parted, this train came in, and I got this nice shot. This is the line that went up towards Dorval and out to, I think it was called Rigaud. Excuse my pronunciation.
It's been cut back to Hudson.
Oh boy. These are the stainless steel gallery coaches that the Montreal commuter system had. And also at Point Clear, they had the VIA LRCs. It was very rare to see one of these old Elco units powering an LRC. For the most part, it was some other locomotive hauling it. But that day, I just happened to catch a nice 3-car set. It's the only shot I have of this. This is up in Jasper. This is the Canadian and the passing CN freight. This is out in Bulletin Beach on the Esquimalt and the Nanaimo Railroad on Vancouver Island, running out of Victoria. Again, I have Canadian relatives that live in Nanaimo, so they took me around the Grand Tour, and lo and behold, there was a train. That year, we were on the Rocky Mountaineer back in 1995, and these are some of the U-boat GE units that are used to haul it. This is in Vancouver, and after we got into Calgary, this is the train leaving Calgary the next morning, heading back to Vancouver. This is downtown Calgary. You see in the background. This is Calgary C train with Siemens with Duwag cars. The original Duwags, I think they're slowly being retired now. That's Calgary in the background, and way in the background, some of the Rocky Mountains. This is down towards City Hall near Olympic Park, Duwags, C train. And this is Olympic Plaza, C train, downtown. This is up towards nearing the Jubilee station of the Red Line. Again, Siemens Duwag U2s. Calgary in the background. This is up towards at the Brentwood terminus. That's the last stop on the line that goes to Brentwood. Again, these are Duwags. More duogs along the same line further down. They use a lot of highway median running. There's a C train coming up on another line going up towards Brentwood. And now moving further north, we're in Edmonton. And this is at the Brandon Government Center Station underground. These again are also duog cars. And this is up by Stadium Station outside of Edmonton. Edmonton's in the background. You can see these buildings in the back. That's downtown Edmonton. This is the Menzies Bridge crossing the North Saskatchewan River. Overhead is a museum trolley operation that runs along this bridge that has the orange on it. There's a Edmonton Heritage Park, and they have trolley cars that go over this. The ERA actually chartered a few of these trolley cars during their convention back in, I think it was 1996. So that's when I was up there.
Ron, a little background on the high-level bridge in Edmonton.
Yep.
Where the trolley runs now was actually the main line of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. The trolley originally, way before my time and yours, when Edmonton had trolleys, ran on the side and ran left-hand running on the bridge, so that just in case the doors had to be opened and people had to evacuate, they would evacuate inward. So
Right.
There was a crossover at each end of the bridge when the actual Edmonton trolley system ran, and they were going to put the light rail back on it, and decided, I'm not sure why, to build it a completely new bridge next to the railroad bridge, which also, if you'll notice, is a car bridge on the second deck.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks. Again, this is at Stadium Station departing, heading towards downtown. And again, over at University Stadium Station, on the other side of the North Saskatchewan River, it goes back underground again. These are all duog cars. They've got new cars there now. And then moving further west, I'm going to just quickly wrap up the show and go down the west coast. This is Vancouver, the SkyTrain Mark 1s. This is at the Sky Bridge over the Fraser River. I think the station that's nearest to there is called Columbia. Then you got to walk up a hill a little bit, and some other rail fans have cut holes in the chain link fence to allow these shots to be taken. So I haven't been the first one to get this shot. This is from the Nanaimo station on the SkyTrain Line 1. Downtown Vancouver's in the background. Again, these are all Mark 1 cars. Just a quick jog up to Alaska. These are RDC baggage combines, number 712 RDC up in the Seward, Alaska. This is in Anchorage, Alaska. Keep in mind, these shots are taken about 9, 10 o'clock at night. This was taken about 11 o'clock at night when the skies cleared up a little bit, when the daily excursion train came in from Fairbanks with all the tourists on board. But yeah, just imagine you can shoot with ASA 40 or 50 at 11 o'clock at night. And this train's moving. White Pass and Yukon, we did on the cruise ship, as we did with the Alaska Railroad. That's their steam engine. It's a 282. This is one of the General Electric diesels that they have up there with an Alpo 6-251A prime mover. They've since been re-engined, and now, from what I understand, these engines are about to be retired. They've been repainted green and yellow, but they're going to be retired and replaced with a whole new generation of locomotives. Hopping up to the middle of the Pacific, this is the what do you call it? The Lahaina, Canapalian Pacific Railroad, steam, what they call the sugar cane train. One of the qualifications to be a conductor in this line is that you have to play a ukulele while you're conducting the train. Unfortunately, this little operation is long since gone. They couldn't make it go over, so I'm not sure if the tracks are even there anymore, but at least I was able to catch it in 1991. This is him steaming along the sugarcane plantation. Now we go back to the mainland. We're in Seattle. This is the original Talgo 200 pendular that went between Seattle and Washington via Everett. This is downtown King Street Station. This is Amtrak F40s. So Superliners back in '93. They had just taken delivery of these new General Electric P32 BWHs. They're basically freight units with an HEP unit added to the back, and they used them in passenger service while Amtrak was waiting for the delivery of the P40 Genesis locomotives. These are the stopgap engines. I think they bought about 25 of them. They're still in switcher service in Sanford and various other locations throughout the whole system. They're still running them. Once in the blue moon, if they're short of equipment, these will actually hit the road and go in mainline service. This is the P40s as in their original colors at King Street, passing the now long defunct Kingdome, F40s, P32 BWHs, P40 Genesis, Seattle's monorail, which if you've ever ridden it, the compressors and air brake system sound just like an R17 on the IRT. If you close your eyes, you think you're on the old Lex with an R17. Moving down to the coastline, you're in Portland. These are the Type 1 Bombardier LRVs on the MAX system. This is back in 1987. This is out in 60th Street, going all further away from Portland over the Steel Bridge. This is the one of the two Gomeco Heritage trolley replicas that they ran in Portland. After that operation faded away, I think they were sent down to Memphis or something like that, and I'm not sure where they've gone to now. They're no longer in Memphis. They're someplace else.
They're in St. Louis, but the
St.
line in St. Louis is also mothballed, so who knows?
These cars have had a lot of luck, haven't they? Then we're down in San Francisco. This is back from a visit in 1977. This is right after the bicentennial. This is when the Southern Pacific commutes in the full bicentennial colors. This is at 4th and Townsend Terminal downtown, not really downtown, but yeah, technically San Francisco. This is down in Menlo Park with a GP9 and Southern Pacific Gallery commute cars. Notice the length of the cars, the train. They didn't have much of the ridership back then. South of Menlo Park, there's a steel truss bridge that got the train blasting over it. They are so strict with trespassing on the track, these shots are no longer possible. You'll get ticketed for even stepping foot off the main public roads onto the right of way. They're very strict about it out there. They bought a bunch of gallery coaches from Nippon Sharyo, and they've been using them plus some Bombardier multi-levels as baby bullets on limited stop express service up and down the Peninsula Commute from San Fran down to San Jose. Out of San Francisco, you have light rail up in Sacramento. These are the original Siemens Duog LRVs. They're U2As, that's their classification. This is at the Watt Manlove station. This is downtown Sacramento. It still looks like that right now. They just have different cars. This is at the state capitol in Sacramento, going right across. I forget what street it is. I think it's either 5th Street or 8th Street. It's one of the directions, I forget. But that's the California state capitol, Sacramento. Going back south again, here's the Napa Valley Wine Train with the Elko PAs. The thing runs at 15 miles an hour to give you a nice smooth ride while you're enjoying the wine and luncheon or dinner for a huge amount of money. Robert Mondavi Winery. I was chasing the train, so I was able to get a few shots of the dinner train. Back to San Francisco, we're in Jack London Square in Oakland. These are the California bi-level coaches used in the Capitol service. This is up in Santa Barbara, P40s and the Coast Starlight going north. Back down to San Francisco, we're in the BART system with the original A series A cars. We're at the Cerrito del Norte. These cars are slowly being retired and replaced with Bombardier cars. The latest news on the Bombardier next generation BART cars is that because of the software issues that they've had and all the service failures they've had with the new cars, BART is now refusing to accept any new cars from Bombardier until the software glitches have been fixed. So these cars still have a little bit of a reprieve left in life. So if you can, get your pictures while you can. If you want to travel up to San Fran, get them while you can. This is down in Fruitvale, two A-class cars passing each other. This is at Ashby, underground shot. And at the MacArthur station, this is the interchange between the Richmond and the Concord line. And this is a very young me in 1980 and a BART shop tour during the ERA convention. I was a mere 23 years old at the time. Look at that full head of hair. My God. BART cars as originally designed and outfitted with deep cushion seats and more transverse seating. That's the original BART map. It was very, very simple back then. No extensions off of Concord, Bayfair, or beyond Fremont, and Daly City was the last stop. Cable cars in San Francisco. This is the California Street cable car. This is the what do you call it? The Hyde Street cable car coming out of Fisherman's Wharf. The Iron Monster car #1 at the end of the J line. The rails actually end right underneath the cowcatcher. The line has since been extended all the way to connect with the M line and now forms a giant circle. So the J basically becomes the M and the M becomes the J at some point. These are scenes from 1977 on Market Street before they opened up the Muni subway. You have trolley coaches and PCCs on Market Street. The only telltale that this in the 1970s is this giant ventilation grid over here for the Muni Metro and BART. But aside from that, the scene could be from the 1960s for all you know. PCCs in the Muni paint scheme out in the El Taravel. The N Judah PCCs, and one of the, I think there was only a couple of SLRVs that had the trolley pole outfit on the top. 1212 and 1215, I think, were the two cars. The ERA chartered the 1212 and ran it all over the whole system. This is our charter car with a PCC and regular service passing us. This is at the end of the Dubosi or Sunset Tunnel. We posed it there, and there they climbed out gingerly and got this shot and climbed back on gingerly. Nowadays, they wouldn't allow you to do that, liability issues. Top of the Mission Dolores Park on the J. Again, with the trolley pole equipped SLRV. West Portal. Hasn't changed much except for two successive more generations of cars. This is on the N Judah line, past the hospital university complex and heading out towards the beach. This is over at Church Street, underground, SLRVs, and trolley coaches on Columbus Avenue. Transamerica Pyramid in the back. And now I know the way to San Jose. Here's one of the VTA UTDC LRVs. Subsequently, these were replaced with new cars. And these LRVs went to Salt Lake City for a brief stint. And now, from what I understand, they're all retired. Further down, working my way down the coast, we're in between LA and San Diego. We're at San Clemente Pier, looking back towards the shoreline with the Amtrak Pacific Surfliner service train going by. Here's a San Diegan coming up with Horizon and Amfleet, a hodgepodge of Heritage Baggage, Amfleet, and Horizon coaches. And one of the Metrolink trains coming through with the Bombardier multi-level style coaches. And one of their F-59 PHIs powering in the push mode. And there's a couple of surfer dudes looking at dudes waiting for the train to go by so they can get across the track and go home. What a nice life. This is at San Clemente Beach. Just a real quick story, and we're running a little bit late. I got about another 5 or 10 minutes left, Andy. Little story behind this picture here. After I shot this picture, I had to leave the beach. The lifeguards had come up to me and said that because I had a camera with a long lens, that a lot of the bikini girls were getting creeped out by some Asian guy with a long camera lens. They thought I was some kind of a perv. So the lifeguard said to me, I said to them, I'm just taking pictures of trains. And well, we can't tell which way you're pointing the camera. I know this is a public beach, but to maintain the public peace, please leave. So I got these 2 shots and left. Further down the road along the Pacific Ocean, I'm not sure what location this is. These are one of the Amtrak California cars, the San Diego Coaster. So obviously this is south of Oceanside. Now we're down in San Diego, the last city of the whole tour. This is the Santa Fe Depot. And you see the little T symbol in the front. This is when this was called the San Diego Trolley, not the MTS. This is taken back in March of 1983, when this operation was practically brand new. Years later, I came back, and I got in addition to the doo-wags, they had already taken delivery of the Siemens SD70 LRVs. This is out in Lemon Grove Depot. This is at the American Way Station, doo-wags, and now SD100s, also at the American Way Station. This is right next to the San Diego Amtrak Santa Fe Depot. Doo-wags at the Qualicum Station, Qualicum Stadium Station. The football team no longer plays there. The Chargers are long since left. I think a local college university is taking it over for college football. And this is downtown on C Street. This is doo-wag U2. They're now relabeled MTS, obviously. This is also on C Street at 5th Avenue. And this is at Old Town. Some of the lines terminated at Old Town. This train was just sitting here waiting for me. It was posed. And we are here at with the ERA convention. They gave us a quick shop tour and control center tour. So you have a comparison of the U2s and the SD100s next to each other, the U2s being on the left. And with that, folks, I have a whole bunch of other slides, but I think I'm going to end the show because it's now 10:05. Andy, what do you think? You want to go on, or you want to cut it off at this point? This is the plan then.
I think we can. You just hold on to more pictures for another show, Ron.
Okay, great. So, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the tour, the Whirlwind tour, dating back to the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
I just let everybody else. I believe you can, and yep. So you should all be able to chat and unmute.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
I was in the Navy 1980 in San Diego when it first opened up.
Okay.
Old Town was the line that ended in Old Town has been extended. I forgot where.
Oh, yeah, it goes further north, and it's going to keep on going even further north. They've got plans to extend the system even further.
Yeah. I remember
by the way, I don't know if I want to be accused of letting the cat out of the bag, but keep as a hint, a little bit of advertisement for the ERA. Keep the July 4th weekend of 2022 open. We are kind of trying to, at this point in the game, aiming to base a ERA national convention in San Diego during the July 4th weekend of 2022. So if any of you are still working or whatever, and want to attend the convention, start putting in for vacation time during that week.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're heading. Unfortunately, Toronto is not going to be an option anymore because they are slowly but surely converting all the overhead wire in Toronto from trolley pole operation to catenary operation, where the mounts, instead of being U-shaped like this with the wire underneath, they're N-shaped, they're U-shaped with the wire hung below. That's for pantograph operation. Once they convert a line like they did with St. Clair, any trolley pole equipment can't operate on it. So essentially the CLRVs, the PCCs, and the Peter Witt, if that ever comes out again, they can't operate over these lines. And the choices of routing are slowly fading down to zero. And by 2022, it'll be too late.
Couldn't they just put a pantograph on a Peter Witt like they do in Milan?
You know, the guys at the TTS, Toronto Transportation Society, were talking about that they could stick pantograph on top of both PCCs and the CLRVs, and for that matter, it's like Milan, put one on top of the Peter Witt. But who knows whether they're going to do that or not? It's not that much more money. It's basically you have to put the mounts up there, rewire it, put the wire, what do you call it? Yeah, reset it so that the power comes down through the car body in a different portal entry. But the collector is just essentially it's the same. So whether they're going to have the resources, the wherewithal, or the political willpower to do it, who knows? But we're not going to wait around to be here and plan for a convention and find out we can't run anything. So for the time being, until we know for sure, and then with the COVID situation, who knows how many mutant strains are going to be running around out there? It might still be restricted for all you know. We don't know. So rather than deal with crossing borders, we're going to stay within the USA and probably pick San Diego. We're hoping. But that's a very, very preliminary, tenuous schedule right now. But I'm just kind of advertising it right now. So if you guys want to go and attend an ERA convention in 2022, it's going to be July 4th. We're trying to keep it away from Labor Day for other reasons. There's a thing called the Balkan Strip that we're supposed to have in May of 2020 that never happened. Yes.
Ron, it's going to be the weekend after July 4th.
Oh, the weekend
Thursday,
after.
July 7th to Sunday, July 10th.
Okay, folks, July 7th to July 10th.
And have people traveling on July 4th weekend.
What are they? What is
July
ERA
4th
planning for
weekend
this
fares
year?
too high.
Yeah.
What is ERA planning for this?
Nothing.
We
for this
can't do
year, if
anything this
anything?
year because nobody knows
Nothing
what the
this
travel
year.
restrictions are. And the other thing too is, even if we can travel freely within the lower 48, what transit agency is going to host a whole bunch of people on tours? That may not be possible.
Not yet.
Well, I
That's-
suspect
that's
by
the
next
problem.
year it probably will be.
Yeah, I think the safest thing to do is to leave it until probably 2022, when hopefully all the dust settles and we go back to normal. We hope. And we're hoping everything goes back to normal for European travel, because the postponed May 2020 Balkan trip is now scheduled for after Labor Day of 2022, September. That's the reason why the national convention got moved up early.
The line from Old Town that I remember goes out to Santee.
Yep.
It wasn't much. Wasn't much when I was there.
I imagine with transit-oriented development, it's probably all built up right now. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't been to San Diego since the last ERA convention, so it's been a while. I'm looking forward to it.
The last time I went to San Diego was about 85. I want to go to Long Beach too.
Okay. Well, we don't have the itinerary for the convention set, but we're planning to base the thing in San Diego, cover that extensively with a PCC vintage operation. I think we're probably going to land up having a day trip to Orange Empire and probably up to Los Angeles to the Santa Monica and Expo line, and hopefully by then the Center City connector will be open, and the light rail system essentially is going to be like an X figure. Santa Monica to the South Gold Line. I think Long Beach up to the northern end of the Gold Line.
Also, the Orange County streetcars should be running by then.
I hope so. That would be nice.
Well, the last time I was there, the convention was in LA, and we took the side trip down to San Diego to ride the light rail down there.
Hmm.
I was out in
before
Long
2000.
Beach, San Diego last year. It is solid housing now from the Mexican border to north of LA. And when I was out there in 58, 61 in the Navy, there was all kind of open space. There's no open space out there. You basically got to take the rapid transit type train, or otherwise you're just stuck on the freeway in your car. I was just amazed at the change out there.
Yes. Things do change.
Ron,
Yes.
Michigan City, that picture of the kids in the street was 10th Street. Just
Oh,
before you
10th
get to World, yeah, 10th is where you get to World Avenue when you're facing eastbound. And
Okay.
who ran the train race? I did.
Yep.
Those orange crates would run, I tell you, coming down Galena Hill out of South Bend, 3 miles long. We had them things running over 120 mile an hour.
I remember that.
And we didn't.
You
get
had Dave, you had a ERA member on that run where you hit 117 mile an hour. One of my friends, Nestor Daniluk, got off of Lakeshore Limited at South Bend, and he met up with you, and he asked you, how fast can these cars go? And you said, let's find out. You went underneath, did something to the resistor grids and set up the patterns underneath different,
Sure.
and wound her up. You landed up having to stop outside of Michigan City for about 10 minutes. So the dispatcher wouldn't realize you arrived 10 minutes earlier,
Of
which
course.
means you must have been speeding.
Would I do something like that? Come now, Ron, you know me better than that. But the point is, those things were very powerful compared to
Yeah.
the things we got now. And they would run away from a Metro train in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
They were good, fast trains. Hey, thanks for the program, buddy. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I was one of those South Shore cars beating all the cars on 990 going the East Chicago bypass. We were rocketing along at probably 80 mile an hour, and we were passing all the cars. Nobody was passing us.
Oh, if anybody gets to town looking for some of the old stuff, just to get them off onto the street running right at Sheridan Avenue, which you're just beginning way on the west end. There's a yard out there with a whole bunch of the old stuff in there. It owns by a guy who, I guess you'd call him a collector. But he got a whole bunch, he got what, 7 or 8 cars in there, the old orange crates. So somebody around it, I don't know if they let you in there or not. I don't see anybody around.